I'm Yvonne Denome. I'm the Title I manager, and I'm also supporting with CARES Act implementation. I have members of the grants team supporting me today with the office hours. And so, Sandy, would you like to take a minute to introduce yourself and any other members of the grants team that's on board today?
Sure. I'll start. My name is Sandy Grimes. I'm coordinator for the financial support team under the comptroller. And where we kind of fit in with this is we support all the schools and offices in answering questions and stuff on CARES Act grant funding. So we do a lot of the follow-up and work directly with the schools to make sure they understand what they need to do. So it's good that we have so much participation. They want to do it right.
Any other members of our CARES Act grants team on board or in this session? Okay. All right. Well, we're going to go ahead and get started this morning. Courtney is placing a link to the CARES Act office hours in the chat box. This is going to be a rolling CARES Act office hour document for all of our meetings between now and the end of the year. And it's going to be used to capture all of the questions that are being asked to make sure that we're setting everyone up for success. And in addition to that, these meetings are being recorded, and upon download, the recording will actually be uploaded into a CARES Act into a CARES Act playlist on YouTube. And so I am going to ask all participants to mute their lines when they're not speaking, just to keep the mute mics. Yes, thank you, Courtney. Just to be able to keep the sound down. So what I was saying was that Courtney is putting in the meeting agenda. That will be updated within 24 hours after the office hours. We're capturing the questions and providing responses to each of the questions. And then in addition to that, we're recording the session, and the recording will be downloaded and then uploaded into the CARES Act YouTube playlist. And so you'll be able to sign and listen to any of the recordings. So I'm going to kick us off today. We had two questions that were pretty consistent this week that I want to make sure that I start with those today. And the first question is about the CARES Act money for the departments who may be sending out equipment. And the question was about, do the items that the departments are sending out, do those have to be placed on the school inventory? And so my response to that is I have worked with instructional technologies services and facility services for some of the items. They already have an inventory process in place. So for example, IT, when they send out items to the schools, those items are going to be going to the T-specs, and their process is for the T-specs to put them into the asset management system, which is called Remedy. And then there are FCPS asset tags attached to those technology items. When there are departmental asset tags, for example, the technology, they will not have to be on the school inventory form. All right. So in essence, you want to make sure that you're coordinating with your T-specs. And Gardner Howe has forwarded me an email that will detail out that process. So there will be an email to go out with that information. Another question that I want, Tasha, I see a hand. I'm going to pause.
Oh, thank you. Sorry to interrupt. I just wanted to know, does that include even the smaller, maybe just barely above $50 items? I think maybe not cords might not fit into that, but I think there were some smaller items that they might not normally inventory. Would that be included in their process?
So I'm going to say that's going to be on a case-by-case basis. If they are the smaller items, and if your T-spec says no, these items, we're not going to put them in our inventory. Thank you for that, Tasha, because you're absolutely right. Those smaller items may need to go on the school inventory. The other update that I want to provide about the inventory, you have been asked to complete your school inventory forms for the items that were initially sent, the thermometers, hand sanitizer dispensers. And currently I have sent out 226 asset tags, and I'm currently holding on sending out the additional asset tags. I have notifications from about 26 schools right now that I'm holding. And I want you to know that as of Friday last week, I was notified that given the multiple grants, and I want to emphasize, and this kind of alludes to the second question about when does CARES grant money have to be spent? December or June, right? So I want to make sure that I'm providing a clarification on that. So I want you to be aware that when the CARES Act funds, when we're talking about the allocations that have been moved into your school accounts, and you have internal order numbers for, those are for hourly teacher, hourly technical, PPE, and for cleaning supplies, that you've been provided those internal order numbers for. For those pots of CARES Act funds, the due date on that we're saying is June 30th, 2021. However, there have been a couple of grants that have come into the school division with deadlines. For example, the CFR monies that have come into the school division, those have to be expended by December 30th. So I want to make sure that everyone understands that when you're asked to spend the funds, or when departments are saying we have funding that we have to have gone December 30th, it's a different pot of CARES Act funds, okay? So for the CARES Act ESSER funds that we're talking about, again, it's June 30th, 2021, and it's for hourly teacher, hourly technical, PPE, and cleaning. So what happened was because the CRF funds came into the school division with a December 30th deadline, they had to be expended, and those funds came from the Treasury Department, not through the United States Department of Education, where the CARES funds came from. So different offices, different rules. So because of that, some of the expenses that were initially to be charged against the CARES fund, in order to exhaust the CRF or other funds, the COVID funds or the FEMA funds, there have been items that have shifted from one grant to another. So we are waiting direction before I send out any additional asset tags, because if items are moved, let's say from CARES Act ESSER, and their shift to CRF, Fairfax has been notified that we may have to realign our asset tags. So please please continue to complete your inventory forms. Please place Fairfax server. Please continue to email me to let me know that they're there, but you will get an email from me that says I'll get these out to you ASAP. All right, so I've done a lot of talking, and I'm going to pause and check for raised hands and questions. Are school monitors part of the hourly funding? Mr. Johnson, that's a great question. So the school monitors that the county is using operational funds, it's my understanding that those funds have already been moved to your school accounts. Those are utilizing operating funds, not federal grant funds. However, the Title I schools, in addition, received an opportunity for 3 additional school monitors, or Title I has funded them as IAs, and they are hourly, technically hourly technical, but in our funding stream, they are funded as IAs, right? And so the county monitors, those have been already moved from the operating into your school accounts. The Title I ones, those will be supplemental in nature. You'll have to follow the reimbursement process, which includes the FS 174, that FS 174 for Title I purposes. FS 174, Title I purposes, requires the a reimbursement process, the FS 174, and that FS 174 would be sent to Tanya Charles to pay for more monitor hours if you are not. So Tiffany, I believe you're on regarding the question about using hourly funds for CARES for monitors. I do not believe that that is an option, but Tiffany, might you either affirm or insert your thinking here? I'm not seeing Tiffany. Sabrina, I believe you're
Yeah.
on the call.
Yes, I am.
All right.
Mhm.
Sabrina, the
And so the
question
question
about,
is,
go ahead.
if you could go ahead and restate it, just to make sure I'm clear.
Absolutely. So there was a question asked as to whether or not the CARES grant could pay for more monitor hours if they are not a Title I school. And so I want to,
The-
go ahead.
Okay, it is my understanding that it cannot be used for that purpose because that was not included in the original application.
That's
That
my
was
understanding
my
also.
Go ahead, Sandy, I'm sorry.
That was my understanding also, Sabrina. I'm just in agreement because that money for the monitors went into the school's operating fund and they were managing it that way. So it's definitely separate from the CARES Act grant funding.
Yeah, it was my understanding that the hourly technical that was put in the CARES Act was specifically for family communication, for scheduling, for updates to the student information system. I see
Correct.
some
And
hands.
efforts that go above and beyond the contract or the normal day.
Yes. Maria, I see your hand raised.
Oh, thank you. I have a question. I was looking at the chart that you have on that CareX document, and it says that you can pay hourly funds for teachers for materials distribution after school. And so I had no idea, and I've done a ton of them, including one this week. Is there any way to go retro on that, or is that just moving forward?
So, Maria, that's an excellent question. You can go retroactive on that. If you do, okay, so I'm going to detail the process. If you do that, you need to have clear documentation for it, right? You need to make sure that each of your teachers, whoever participated, completes the FS 174. When they complete the FS 174 on line 1, they have to list their contractual hours. On line 2, they would list CARES Act hyphen family communication engagement, right? And then that's where they would list their CARES Act hours. The employee has to sign it. It cannot be electronic signature. It has to be a physical signature, and you as the principal or your designee would need to sign that. A correction memo would need to be completed, and I'm going to say, when we're retroacting, we really should have either a memo from you as the principal or an email from you certifying that the time they are being compensated for was in alignment with the CARES Act. So absolutely. And then you want to make sure that you save all that documentation to the CARES Act server in your school folder. And I'm also going to name that if you want to send it to a member of our team to preview it before it goes across to HR, we're happy to do that as well. Great question.
All right, thank you.
My pleasure.
Yvonne,
Dottie?
do they need the HR 11 also?
So because they're backdating the HR 11, the HR 11 is technically replaced by the correction memo in that regard. Okay, so the correction memo is when they're actually, or the HR 11 is needed when they're actually, when the time has been entered into my time. And in this case, the time hadn't been entered, so the correction memo is required. All right.
Yep, that makes sense.
Leah, did you have another question?
Nope, that makes sense. I've done a couple because we did some stuff for over the summer, so I know exactly what you're talking about.
Okay, all right, excellent. Dottie, I see your hand up.
Hi, thank you. My question is regarding the sub items for hourly teacher, hourly technical, and the cleaning supplies. Are we able to move funds between those accounts or no?
Unfortunately, you are not. So, and the reason being is that the application that went to the Virginia Department of Ed was pre-approved, and Fairfax was very specific in how the application was written and submitted to VDOE. And as a result, the VDOE has approved the application, and the application at the time of submission was based on identified needs within Fairfax County. Great question, though.
Thank you. And could you provide any guidance on certainly the funds we're going to need to purchase more PPE than the money that we have allocated? Is that something that the county is going to pay for, or where is that money supposed to come from?
Sandy, Sabrina, I know you guys are in the meetings with the comptroller with regards to the other grants. Do you happen to have an update on what the county is thinking with the procurement of additional PPE?
I can only tell you that if there are additional grant funding, grant funds that can be used to order PPE and stuff, that's being sent out centrally and not charged to the schools at all for items that are needed. Sabrina, you might be able to kind of weigh on this also, but again, it's not going to be that you would get extra funding to order stuff. And it may be that you need to go ahead and get stuff that comes out of your operating fund for now. But if there is additional grant funding to be had, we are trying to use all those funds. I think, Sabrina, you said this morning that the county funds are pretty much spent, right?
Exactly. Yeah. So I'm in complete agreement with what you just said, Sandy.
Yeah. So I know that's not the answer you guys perhaps want to hear. The funding that was allocated to the schools is pretty much what you have. Other grant funding that we have, we will try to use that and send what is needed. If there are special needs for your school that you need right away, what we're telling schools to do is go ahead and order it with school funds. And if there's an ability to move the charges, if there's extra funding available, we can do that.
All right.
But at this time, there's not.
Right.
That's a shame. I have a lot of money in teacher hourly that I have no idea how I'm going to be able to use, but could desperately order PPE. And I know that I am certainly not alone in that boat as a principal, but I'll respect the process.
Yeah, I hear you, and we are hearing that from a lot of schools, and unfortunately, because it's federal grant funding, we've got to make sure we follow how it was allocated.
Yeah. So my recommendation, as I've had individual conversations with principals who've reached out to me, I have indicated to them, I mean, ultimately, your region leaders are in those discussions when the decisions are being made. So one of the things I know is happening is if principals are letting region know, hey, we're in need of PPE. The other need that I've heard that still continues is the need for some students to still be able to access, right? And so I know that Region has taken that back to IT services to say, you know, we're still struggling to get some of our families connected. And so Region has been advocating at the senior level on your behalf for that. So not to put Region on the spot, but their voices, you know, can definitely be advocates for you when you continue to have identified needs. Mr. Johnson, I see your hand up. Did you have another question?
Yes, I was just, that was early on. I just wanted to clarify the response that you gave earlier about the funds. I just wanted to clarify that the funds that I have now in hourly is what everything else has been taken out of that. I can use that for my hourly teacher.
Yeah, so the CARES Act funds that you currently have an internal order number for, those are your CARES Act, that is your CARES Act allocation. So that needs to be utilized for efforts related to intervention, family outreach, for the CARES Act related requirements. Did that answer your question?
Yes, it did. And just the second part to that. So if I have a non-classroom teacher or teacher that are performing some of these roles, will they be paid or should they be paid on the same pay band?
So when you say non-classroom teachers, are you referring to your special education teacher, your resource teacher?
No, I'm sorry. Maybe like IAs, like with distributing books or helping with some of those logistical things.
So actually your operational staff would charge towards your hourly technical.
Okay.
Yes.
Thank you.
And hourly technical could be for things, again, family communication, providing intervention, support to students, if they're distributing books to families, scheduling, all of those types of things. Kind of like my rule of thumb, the best way I can explain it is that operational staff should charge to hourly technical and hourly teacher, and there is a fine line, but your licensed staff should charge to your hourly teacher.
It also, Vaughn, this is Sandy again, has to do with what they're doing. So you could have a T-SPAC who's working with parents or students and doing some sort of teaching that would fit against hourly teacher, if that's actually the duty that they're performing under the CARES Act. So there's kind of a little, there's a differentiation there that you could use the hourly teacher for that if that's the duties they're actually performing. But if they're doing things like handing out laptops and regular duties like that, that would be under the technical.
Okay, that makes sense. Thank you so much for clarifying.
Okay, and I want to emphasize that the hourly technical is unique because there are different pay bands based on who is doing the work. So I want to emphasize that there are no caps to the hours, but there is a cap to your allocation, right? So it's important that you're monitoring, and I'm going to say at a minimum on a monthly basis that you're monitoring your spend down for your hourly teacher and technical under CARES Act, because you know, your parent liaison charge to your CARES Act hourly technical is going to be at a different band than your SIA, who is updating SIS charge to the CARES Act. Cecilia, I see your question about, do the monitors hired with Title I funds have to be attached to a specific staff member with the ADA accommodations? And the answer to that is no, because you have a little more flexibility in how you're able to utilize your Title I IAs. I'm going to go back to hand raises. I see Tasha.
Thank you. So to me, the hourly technical versus hourly teacher, it seems to still be a little confusing, because what it says in the CARES Act office hours notes mentions that under hourly teacher, teachers can be paid for distributing materials, but my understanding was that was an hourly technical activity. So I am hoping for some more clarity on what you said earlier, that teachers should be paid under hourly teacher. That makes sense to me, but then it also makes sense that basic communication wasn't listed under hourly teacher, that was listed under hourly technical. So I'm still caught in some instances of trying to decide which category to put people under.
I'm going to answer that. The main thing that we are saying is that the work that's being done and what they get paid for and how they get paid has to be commensurate with what they're doing. So if a teacher is working to hand out laptops, they're not actually teaching. That teacher's not teaching. They're working hours beyond their contract. To me, what they're doing is laptop distribution would fall under the hourly technical because of what they're doing. They're not teaching anybody anything. But the minute that they hand out a laptop and they do any sort of teaching to that student or that how to work on it and do things, that falls under hourly teacher.
Okay,
so
and so then by the same token,
right, it is kind of gray, but you have to make that distinction because of how we have it written in our documentation, that we want to be paying these people commiserate for what they're doing, because paying them to hand somebody laptops is a different duty and falls under a different pay band than somebody that's actually teaching somebody something.
And so by the same token, an IA who is working together with teachers leading a reading support workshop for parents and children, where the teachers are being paid at the teacher under hourly teacher, the IA should also then be paid under hourly teacher because they're doing the same work.
I don't know what they're doing, so it would be
if they're doing the sort of intervention support.
What duties are they doing? Support of the teacher, or are they actually teaching a portion of the
They're
workshop?
Teaching a portion of the workshop, just as the same as the teachers.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Thank you, guys.
Hi, Mary Ann, I see your hand up.
Okay, well, now I have two questions. I want to go back to the monitor. If we were to use the same person that we hire as a monitor to do additional work that would fall under family communication and engagement, could we then use the CARES funds to pay for that time?
So I'm going to say yes, and that is where your FS 174, Marianne, is crucial, right? So for the IA monitor on line 1, you are going to list IA monitor, and your monitor would record all of their operational hours on line 1. On line 2, they would list CARES Act and then hyphen, if it's family communication and engagement, that's where they would list those hours. You would also need to make sure that in that case that you provided them a copy of the HR 11, which has the index and the coding for the CARES Act, so that they can physically, when they're entering their time and my time, they have the coding for their IA role, but then they have the coding for their time against CARES Act. And then again, you're going to want to make sure that the FS 174 is aligned with the My Time report that is generated and required as part of that documentation. Does that help?
Yes. Second question. So you and I met on Tuesday and went through a few particulars, and
yes,
but now it seems to be expanding here as to whether or not to use hourly technical or hourly teacher. So I guess I'm just confused here. So things like delivering books to homes, teachers are dropping off readers to students. Is that now considered technical because they're not actually teaching, they're just dropping it off? Or is it hourly teacher because it's going to be used for teaching?
Sandy, I advised them that is considered, because it has an instructional component to it. I advised her to charge that to hourly teacher. Would you agree?
I think you can make that argument, yes.
Okay.
In that case.
Okay.
It really is. I know we're splitting hairs here, you guys, but we have to make a decision on what can fit under hourly teacher and what can fit under hourly technical. There is an instructional component to that if the teachers are doing it, especially if they're going to be doing communication and any kind of teaching when they do the drop off, which could, I'm guessing, happen.
Yeah, so for the schools that have reached out to me directly, and I'm going to say to this online, if you have an area that you're uncertain of, please reach out to a member of our team, put the request in writing, because then by putting that in writing, when we respond, you can include that as part of your documentation. But in general, if you reach out to me and in our discussion, it has an instructional tie, I'm going to approve teacher time towards hourly teacher, as long as that instructional component is there.
Yvonne?
Yeah.
Just as the one with the compliance hat on here.
Yeah.
I just want to reiterate, I agree with what you and Sandy have said so far in terms of making that argument. I want to stress to the schools to document your thinking, document your process, and include all of that information as Yvonne has so laid out so well on the the FS 174, because that's what's really going to be key with this process. Thank you.
Absolutely. And to Tasha's question in the chat, about being careful to make sure the HR 11 and the FS 174 reference support or intervention. Absolutely. In the description, what I have been advising schools that when they complete the HR 11 and the FS 174, that they preface it by saying CARES Act hyphen, and then putting what is the category that is allowable under CARES? Is it scheduling? Is it intervention? Is it family communication and engagement, right? So then this way, everything is clearly aligned, and on the description in the upper right-hand corner on the FS 174, you've got CARES Act, you've got the category, and then on the line 2 of the FS 174, where the teacher is actually, the teacher or the technician is entering their time, you've got it again. So Tasha, you're absolutely right. That alignment is critical. Joanne, Courtney is absolutely right about librarians doing curbside checkout. That can definitely be charged to hourly teacher. These are great questions, guys. I really appreciate the thoughtfulness with the questions. I see, what does scheduling category entail? So scheduling can be anything from appointments coming to the school to meet with the principal, to work with getting a child between services. Again, it would, you have some flexibility there. So Cecilia, if you have a specific example, you know, please go ahead and let's ask that. And then I can give you a definitive answer, or if you're just wanting like some creative thinking.
I think what I was wondering is, so there's a lot of scheduling in terms of people coming to pick up supplies, get computers, schedule for a different variety of supports, etc. There's also a huge need to dedicate a lot of time to thinking about the overall schedules in order to get all of our schools to, for one, transition to in-person instruction. So there's time to dedicate to thinking about that and strategizing around that and developing that. Is that included in the CARES Act, or is it just scheduling connected to specific students coming and going and student need?
Sabrina and Sandy, I'm not sure what your thinking is on this, but I believe, given that scheduling is needed as a result of COVID, because we wouldn't be doing that if we weren't in the current state, that would be permissible. What is your thinking?
As long as they can justify it under, it has to fit under our guidelines for intervention and support and everything. And I believe it's how they do it as much as anything else, how they justify how it's related. And principals have the right to sign off on stuff and how it fits. We've just got to make sure we've got all the proper documentation to support it.
I agree.
So if we have staff members doing that work, is that hourly technical or hourly teacher?
Doing what work? Doing scheduling?
Yes.
Well, it depends on who. There are two factors that weigh in on this, and this is where I think people are getting confused. Number one is who's doing the work beyond contract, and number two is does it have that teaching component to it? It does depend on whether they're an exempt employer or not, too. You got to look at both sides of that. Who's doing the work? Is it related to instruction? Because if you've got a front office person handing out laptops, that's hourly technical, correct?
Yes, I meant more having staff work outside of their contract hours to maybe develop instructional and intervention schedules
Right.
for students coming to school in person.
Yeah.
So restructuring and readjusting school schedules.
Right.
Yes, and that's why, that's what I
I have to
understood.
leave. Sorry, guys. I have to leave. I'll be back in just a
Okay.
minute. Have a call.
Cecilia, I understood that to be your question, which was why I said yes.
Thank you.
Martha, you have a question?
Yes, my question is, do we have a list of basic concepts like communication, family engagement, intervention that are aligned with CARES Act according with what the school submitted to VDOE in order to say, hey, this is the activities that we can do it, and this is hourly teacher, this is hourly technical, then we can divide it? Or there is a description of, there is a list? I really don't know if we have that list.
So Martha, we don't have that list, and because while our application was very specific about hourly teacher and hourly technical, if we created a list, then we have to hold schools to it, right? So what we were trying to do was, while there was a need for hourly teacher and hourly technical, we were trying to provide principals and school staff flexibility within those areas, which is why a lot of this is kind of willy-nilly, because, you know, we're just trying to provide the flexibility, and you know, it is better that we go on a case-by-case basis and engage with principals and school staff to really understand the thinking behind the need, the identified need. It provides that needed flexibility that our schools have. Great question though, Martha. Tasha?
I'm sorry to come back to this again, but I asked earlier if an IA who was teaching a workshop together with teachers could be paid under hourly teacher because they were teaching that workshop after hours. And I heard, yes, they could be paid under hourly teacher because they were doing that support work. But then I see in the notes that you say that IAs are not licensed teachers and would need to be charged to hourly technical. So again, I'm confused there. I'm sorry.
So I apologize for the confusion. So I want to emphasize that IAs, even if they're providing a training, they are not licensed staff. And because they are not licensed staff, they have to be charged to hourly technical. I do know that we have some IAs that are licensed staff. So again, on a case-by-case basis, depending upon if they hold an active licensure and they're being put in a particular role, that would be a case-by-case basis. But again, I'm going to emphasize that most of the IAs do not hold license, and therefore should be charged hourly technical.
But we were also told that SBITs, if they are teaching the parents how to use the technology, that they could be put under hourly teacher. And most of our SBITs, I don't believe they have teacher credentials.
That one I'm going to write down and get further guidance from HR, Tasha, because it was my understanding that, oh, you know what, I'm thinking of T-specs. So
Right.
let me get clarification on that from HR. And
Yvonne,
Joanne is saying that SBITs
Yeah.
are required to have a teacher, but I'm not sure about that. I thought that was T-spec.
every SBIT has a degree in education, and most have worked in the classroom at one time or another. It's the T-specs that are not required to have a teaching license, but SBITs are.
okay.
Right, that's true. It is their T-spec. Actually, you're right. My question was the
Right.
reverse. That our
Right.
T-spec is providing training and support for the families. And we were told that they could also be charged to hourly teacher.
Okay. I'm going to get clarification from HR, and we will make sure that we put that in the minutes, because that definitely is going to be something that we're going to have to investigate and document more clearly. Tasha, thank you for asking that question.
Thank you.
Martha, did you have another question? Mary Ann, I see your hand up.
Yes, I'm sorry. I feel like I'm beating a dead horse here, but to kind of piggyback on Tasha, we had also asked the question, Sandy had made the differentiation that if you were distributing laptops and you were teaching the parent how to use it and how to do everything, then that would be considered hourly teacher. So if an office staff, we're giving out computers and we're sitting down and we're teaching the parents how to use them and showing them how to get on Blackboard and everything of that sort, what am I charging that to? Hourly technical or hourly teacher?
Is Sandy back?
Mary Ann.
I am back, but yeah, go ahead.
Mary
Yvonne.
Ann, I'm sorry, Mary Ann. Who is doing that?
Well, we have two examples. One, IAs have done it, and two, office staff are doing it.
So that would have to be charged to hourly technical.
Mhm. And it sounds like it's a setting where they are answering questions versus set up to provide instruction.
Correct.
Okay, I like the
It
answer
is
that we talked to you about
really
individual
gray
cases.
here, because part of this is where the confusion is coming in, Yvonne, is what level of who's doing the work, not just it's who's doing the work, because we're telling a teacher that's handing out a laptop and showing them how to use it to use hourly teacher. If it's an office assistant, we're telling them to use technical.
Because an office assistant is not a licensed staff member. It's my understanding HR says that licensed staff, licensed teachers have to be paid at the hourly teacher rate.
I wasn't aware of that. That I was not aware of.
So let's connect with HR, Sandy, because
Yep.
this is really a lot of causing a lot of confusion. Let's get it in writing from HR.
Okay, I'll follow up. We can. I do think we need clarification on that.
Absolutely.
So you're saying that teachers, no matter what work they're doing, even though it's beyond contract hourly, have to be paid at a contracted rate.
As long as it's CARES Act related work.
Okay. We need clarification on that.
And I think, Sandy, that we need to use the two examples, right?
Yeah.
We need to give HR the specific examples so that they can respond clearly. And we'll make sure that we capture that in the notes.
Okay, I'm good with that. That's a good clarification. I will tell you, I just got off the phone with our comptroller, and one of the things that came up as we're reviewing some of this stuff to move charges and do things is know that as we're doing these time and attendance correction memos, and that we're gonna give teachers time and for work that they've already done. It is very important that you guys understand that if we see that you're giving every teacher the same number of hours, and it looks like you're just distributing the money instead of making sure they're actually working hours for CARES Act, we're going to review those hours and make sure we have the documentation and really look at it, because that's an audit flag, so to speak, and a compliance issue of what we don't want to see happen is we want to try to use the money. We're going to give every teacher 4 hours, and you do these correction memos. We've got to make sure we have the proper documentation for that stuff and that there's not an appearance. Now, it could be that you did give every teacher 2 hours and every teacher used it, but we better have all the forms and we better have everything in place along with your approvals for that. Sorry, it's just something that came up and I want people to be aware, because it's important to know that we're also having to review this stuff.
Right. And Sandy, Christine had a great question about when will she find out if her submissions are sufficient. So it's my understanding your team is conducting review items that are submitted to the server, and that if additional information is needed, you're going to reach out. So are schools to presume that if they are not contacted, everything that is submitted is either good to go or hasn't been reviewed? Is that correct?
Correct. And we are in the process. It's taken quite a bit of work on our end to go in and do the review. And I will tell you, with a lot of schools, and if I can make sure that as you're going along, it's easier to have the documentation up front as we do this process and put it in the folders as you go, because honestly, we're having to do a lot of follow-up. And in some cases, it's just that they haven't made it. Some schools are reporting that they're having trouble getting the original signed document by the teacher back so that they can get it in the folder. I will tell you that teachers that want to get paid for the work that they're doing should be willing to make sure that those documents are submitted and signed off on.
All right. Mary, I see your hand up.
Hi, I
I'm
have
sorry.
a question.
I'm sorry, Mary.
That's okay. Sorry.
I'm sorry. Because this is a follow-up to what Sandy was just saying, can we answer this question in the chat? It says, can you discuss the naming convention that you would like to use for those files, Sandy?
I basically, what you're doing is you're doing CARES Act grant funding, the date, and then whatever you can put hourly teacher, hourly technical, so
in the
that we
month.
can go in and look in the month.
Oh, in the month, okay. And
Yeah,
Because what that does is we have to match up the time. We have to match up your forms with your time and attendance and when you actually work. So that month is important to be in the naming convention because we spend a lot of time going through documents trying to match it up to the expenditures. And it makes it super hard.
Yeah, I have actually been advising schools to start with the month and put, for example, November, NOV for November, underscore FS 174, and then family engagement, right? So that the month was actually first. So.
And that's fine. If we want to put the naming month.
Sandy, you went on mute. For some reason, somehow you went on mute.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yeah, it's not showing as muted, but I can put that in my weekly email to say naming convention for hourly time and attendance. So we want the month, and then whether it's hourly technical, right? And then what? I'm fine with it. Whatever month it goes with. So, because we are having trouble matching stuff up.
Yeah, and again, I'll just indicate that part of the technical support that I've been providing behind the scenes to a couple of schools that have reached out is I've been reviewing their submission before they dropped it in the folder, just to, you know, they were nervous and rightfully so. So that is something that if your AAs or your folks are uncertain about, I'm happy to set them up for success with that.
Yeah.
Okay, Mary.
Yes, I'm sorry. I'm an AA at Glasgow and the TAP, and I started doing I'm doing the CARES with the hourly teacher or technical. Are we supposed to do an FS 174 and not an FS 173? Is that correct?
The PARS form is FS 174, I thought.
Correct. I'm going to go
option 1, and that said option 2 for FS 173. I was told 173, so that's why I'm now questioning that.
So remember, Sandy, there were two forms, and we made the decision because we needed to be able to document the hours by the day of the month to use option the FS 174.
Yep.
So,
sorry, Mary, it is the FS 174.
Okay, the other one, what I did was it has date, it has program or activity, and then it has hours. And that's what I was going by that is, so that's not, so I need to go back and have everyone.
Yeah, unfortunately, our documentation that's out at the website also, Mary, says FS 174.
Yeah, and I just put the CARES Act web, the link to the website. I want to make sure that everyone has that. And then in the CARES Act office hours document, I've also put the link to the CARES Act website as well.
I have a second question. So if I have people that are working, like office people that are training some of the parents, but they're working their regular hours. Is that extra? Do I do those hours just for CARES, or do I do the hours under their normal hours? That, I mean, they're not hourly people. they're monthly people. Does that make sense?
No, tell me more about that.
Okay, so I have an office person that
Okay.
is teaching some of the parents when they come up to get a laptop, and they will teach them because we have a large Spanish population. So she can speak it, and she talks to the parents then, and she'll show them exactly how to do everything. Does she get, I've never paid her over and above, and I have not paid her out of CARES. Should she be paid out of CARES, or should she just get her normal salary?
So what I'm going to say is that I would look at her job description, right?
Okay.
And so if she is performing CARES Act related
Duties.
Duties
Okay.
that are not within her job description,
Okay.
then I would charge, you could charge that time to CARES Act, because what I suspect is happening while she has a certain role and responsibility under contract,
Right.
she's spending her day working with the families that isn't part of her role and responsibilities. And then to be able to complete her regular duties, she's spending overtime, correct?
Yes, in some cases, yes.
Okay, so what I would do in that case is I would have her document that on the FS 174, provide the HR 11, and that would, those hours, CARES related should be charged to CARES.
Okay.
I realize it's more paperwork, but if you would need to be able to make sure that, you know, if her contractual time is 8 hours, that she is still putting in her 8-hour day.
Right.
But then charging, like if she did 2 hours of parent time during the day, that 2 hours was charged to CARES. So in essence, you know, the first 4 hours she did office duties, then for 2 hours she did CARES, and then for 4 hours she did office duties. You see what I'm saying?
Yes,
she still has to work over though, right? She still has to work beyond contract for a total. That's the key. Okay. I have to leave you guys to go to another meeting. Sorry.
Bye, Sandy. Thank you.
Thank you, Sandy.
Take care.
The other question I had was, when you're saying drop them in a file, you mean just a file folder here. Is that correct?
No. So each of the schools has a folder on the CARES Act server.
Oh, okay.
Yes. And so when you utilize the, I'm going to put the link to the CARES Act website, and the link to the server is in several places on that website. And so all of your documentation for CARES Act must be placed on the server in that CARES Act folder.
Gotcha.
And if you click on it and you don't, it says access denied, then please work with your T-Spec. We will need to work with the finance FAST team to get you access to that. But all CARES Act documentation must be saved to the CARES Act on the CARES Act server.
Okay, thank you very much.
My pleasure.
And I may be calling you.
And please do. That's what we're here for.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Gretel?
Yvonne, it's I'm from Cameron Elementary School, and my principal is there with me. You know, at the beginning of the school year, meaning July, I placed an order for PPE equipment. You know, when we were given the grant for CARES funds. So I'm supposed to be doing a journal entry, correct, to get refunded and be put this PP funds that I that I order through my custodial. If I do my journal entry, I can get this funds refunded, or is it a budget transfer?
Yeah, absolutely, Gretel. You can apply for reimbursement for those charges if they are allowable under the CARES grant, the way the grant was written. So what I have recommended to schools, or actually what is required in that case, is that when you are doing a reimbursement, please send the send documentation of the items that you are requesting reimbursement for, because what you have to do is have my written approval in addition to your my written approval as part of your journal entry process. So in essence, I'm reviewing it just to say, yes, this is allowable and I approve. No, this isn't allowable and it can't be sent across for reimbursement. Does that make sense?
Yes, beautiful. Thank you.
My pleasure. Ellen?
Hi, Yvonne. First of all, thank you guys for the for your time and for having these office hours. I think it is helpful for all of us. And I'm not trying to beat a dead horse, but just going back to the scenario a minute ago about the office person who works 8 hours and maybe does some work that falls under CARES Act. If she's not working beyond her 8 hours, she can't be paid for 2 hours out of her day with CARES money, correct?
That is correct.
Okay.
And that's why we indicated that she has to document her regular work hours.
Okay. Okay. I think it was just a little unclear for some of us. We're just trying to wrap our heads around it still. So thank you.
Absolutely. All right. I know we're 13 minutes over our time, but it was important that these hours or this time together is spent answering your questions. So I just want to send a reminder that the session was recorded and that will be uploaded into the CARES Act YouTube within the next 24 hours. So for anyone that wasn't able to attend, they could go back and review that. The questions have been captured in the document, and we'll make sure that we have all of the answers concise. We have an action, which is to confirm with HR about charges to hourly teacher versus hourly technical for some specific scenarios, the T-SPEC, SBIT scenario specifically. And we thank you for your time, and please let us know what other questions that you may have. We are all available via email or phone, and we view this as our success is your success. So we are here to support your efforts. Thank you all.
Great job, Yvonne.
Thank you, Sabrina. I do appreciate all your help.